Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to the Mic Check Podcast. This is T Word, the People's Champ. Thank you for tapping in. Today, we're going to talk about our series that we've been running, Stars and Champions of Tomorrow. And today, we're going to pick up where we left off with Frank Martin by talking about Keyshawn Davis. He's a 7-0 with 5 knockout, 135-pound fighter signed to Top Rank in ESPN, and he is quickly rising up the ranks in his division. Before we get into that, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. We do appreciate your support. Now let's get to it. Now, Keyshawn Davis, aka the businessman, he's a 23-year-old Orthodox fighter who's 5'9" with a 70-inch reach. So he's got really good physical dimensions to be able to use his physical stature to his advantage and beat his opponents to the punch. Fast hands. He's actually an Olympian, so he's got a lot of experience that kind of put him ahead of a lot of the fighters at 135-pound division. He's basically been really active. In 2022 alone, he had 3 fights. In 2021, he had 4 fights. And then he's on deck to have his first fight in 2023 on April 8th. Looks like it's at the Prudential Center. He doesn't have a named opponent yet. But I do want to talk about just the skill set that he brings to the table. Much like Frank Martin, he's got some very good agility. He's got foot speed, and he's really good at using offensive and defensive controls to stay in control of the fight. So you rarely see him in a disadvantageous position, meaning he doesn't put himself in harm's way unnecessarily. He's very defensive when he needs to be. He beats his opponents to the punch, and then he also uses subtle foot movement to get himself out of the way, and then he also packs the power. And that's something that you need to have at 135, because right now there's a lot of dudes who, I'm not going to call them pillow fisted, but there's not a lot of KO artists in that division. So if he's able to have that one hitter quitter, that one shot that can change the momentum of a fight, that puts him ahead of some guys that might have a little bit better ability. Maybe they've got a better jab or they do combinations better. He's not going to be prone to get beat because of something like that, because he does have that offset. When you think about Gervonta Davis, he's not the biggest lightweight, he's not the fastest lightweight, but he's definitely one of the most powerful, and he uses his defense and his power to his advantage. I'm going to see similar things like that from Keyshawn Davis. I think his defense is really good. His head movement is great. He's not on the center line. He doesn't back out in a straight line. He does a lot of the subtle things that you need a guy at that weight class and of that stature to do. And he's another fighter who could potentially move up to 140 and maybe even 147. When he fills out at the end of the day, he might be able to get down to 147. I think for sure he's going to be at 140 in the very near future. It's really going to boil down to opportunities. A lot of the 135-pound fighters are at PBC and not necessarily at Top Rank. And then you don't have that many scattered in some of the other promotional companies either. So opportunity wise, I don't know if maybe he gets groomed with one company and then moves elsewhere. But I think that if he's going to stay at 135, it's going to be a little bit hard for him to get the quality fights, and might even be even harder to get the belts unless Devin Haney splits the belts up by moving up and vacating, or potentially losing to somebody else who eventually vacates and moves up, or just retires from boxing. Let's say Gervonta Tank Davis. For Davis's part in all of this, he's a little bit behind some of the guys who have double-digit fights, 17, 18, 20 fights. So his timetable of moving him into a championship light might take a little bit of time. The best belt for him to get access to really early, depending on what Devin Haney does, is going to be the WBO belt because of his promotional ties. Just like for Frank Martin, it's a WBA. I think the WBO is the one, they call it the Top Rank belt, or what Bob orders, whatever. All of that aside, if that belt's already in house, he's going to get a shot at it sooner, especially if it's somebody that they think that he can beat. So in my opinion, I think that would be his championship path at 135. And if he goes to 140, he's definitely going to be hunting whoever the WBO champion is. Right now it's Josh Taylor, if I'm not mistaken. And I don't expect him to be the title holder at 140 by the time Keyshawn Davis gets there. So the future looks bright. But again, from a technical standpoint, this is a really solid fighter. There's been a lot of talk about him potentially facing off against Frank Martin at some point. This is one I don't think they're equally yoked in terms of where they're at in their career. I think in the next 2 years, let Keyshawn get about 4 or 5 more fights. Once he's in the double digits, and depending on how he looks, Maybe you step him up to Frank Martin, who's probably going to be some level of champion by then, some type of interim regular champion, something like that. I expect him to have a belt. That's going to be the guy at that point. Maybe in about 2 years, I would say Keyshawn could get about 6 to 8 fights in. And I think that extra seasoning will get him where he needs to be. He'll be around 15 or 16 fights. Additionally, he's been talking back and forth with Floyd Schofield, who's a 135 pounder. Big kid for 135 pound. He's about 5'8", 5'9". From a skill set standpoint, he should stay far away from Martin or Davis. But if he does want to smoke with Martin, with Davis, I think it's a better fit. If they get that fight on, it doesn't look good for Schofield, in my opinion. He's from Texas. I like Kid Austin. I just don't like this fight for him. I think in his appearances that I've seen him, he's not looked at the level that somebody like Keyshawn Davis is. And then Davis has that international experience from going over to the Olympics. So if they do fight soon, I already have a winner. I'm picking Davis, and it's probably going to be by knockout, but that remains to be seen. So that's going to wrap it up for my profile and preview of fighter Keyshawn Davis, aka the Businessman. This has been T for the Mic Check Podcast. I am exiting the booth. Until the next time, peace.